to everybody, and a warm welcome to today's session on Saddarshanam. Thank you, Janki Ramji, for a very beautiful summary of the previous session. I thank the School of Ancient Wisdom. I thank all the organizers, Ram, Ravi, Sajni, Janki Ramji, Malti, Aniket, all those who are responsible for organizing, conducting, recording these sessions. My gratitude to all of you. My gratitude to all the satsangis who are participating in the satsang. It is seekers like all of you, seekers who are deeply interested in the direct path of self-inquiry, in the path of knowledge, who help to hold up the frequency of the world in a stable place. So you bring sanity to the world. My gratitude to all of you. I'll just begin my sharing my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, madam.
Okay, thank you. So last time, as Shri Janki Ram said, we had started with first, second and third shlokas. Before I begin, I would like to offer my pranams to sources of inspiration who inspire me every moment of my existence. So let us close our eyes, keeping our mic on mute. Together, let us chant Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, and Asato Ma Satkamaya to Sri Ramana Maharshi, who is giving us this wonderful knowledge through Saddarshanam, to Sri Narasimha Prabhuji, who is guiding me on the path of direct inquiry, to Sri Shankaracharya, who has made such abundant literature on Advaita Vedanta available to all of us. So let us offer our thanks to them and all the enlightened masters. Guru Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo, Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat, Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us offer our pranams to all the masters of wisdom who illumine our paths. May their grace light the lamp of awareness within us and make us abide in the self. So since today I am planning to cover 4 shlokas because shlokas 4, 5, 6 and 7 deal with the same theme. However, in case we don't have time, then we will stop wherever we are and continue next week. So this is just a summary of shlokas 1, 2 and 3. We understood that for us, all teachers begin with the place where the seeker starts from. So all of us seekers, to us, the world exists. It is very real. It is the most real dimension. We attribute a great amount of reality to the world around us. We think deep sleep is something which is required to rejuvenate the body and mind, to keep up our health, to heal the body, to relax the body, etc. The dream state obviously is very short-lived, though it seems real when it happens. When we are in the dream, it seems to be real. When I'm attacked by a tiger, I'm running away from it, I'm panic-stricken, I'm sweating, I'm shaking, I'm trembling. But when I wake up, the whole thing disappears. So I don't attribute much reality to the dream world. Sleep world, I feel there is nothing very great about it. Though I can't exist without it, I don't attribute much reality to it because I don't see anything in the deep sleep world. But in the waking world, I feel is the most real dimension of my life. Vedanta is not saying what I think is right, but Vedanta and Ramana Maharshi, they begin from where we are so that we can relate to what they are saying. So, Ramana Maharshi is saying the world exists. All of us agree that the world exists. Therefore, because this world is so orderly, everything is happening so harmoniously. Therefore, it has been designed by a powerful creator. It is being sustained by a powerful creator. Therefore, the creator exists. Then, Bhagavan goes on to say, the cinema show of names and forms, that is this world, life, the screen on which it is being projected, that is the screen of awareness, the light which is helping us to perceive what is happening outside, the light of awareness, and the person who is seeing, who I think is me, all of them are in fact manifestations of the self. The philosophies of all religions, no matter which religion we take up, they begin by saying that these separate entities, the individual, that is you and me, the world, reality which we think is around us, and God, the creator, all three exist. They begin by saying that. Then Ramana Maharshi goes on to say, yes, all these three entities will retain their separateness. I will feel that I am different from the world, I am different from God, until I believe that I am the body, mind, and intellect. As long as I believe I am the BMI, till then I will also feel that the world is separate from me and that the creator of the world is different from me. Therefore, it is best to give up this delusion that I am the body, mind, and intellect. Why is it a delusion? Because the body, mind, and intellect are continuously changing. They have birth and death. They are not eternal, they are not infinite, they are limited. Whereas the self which I am is unlimited. It is eternal. It has no birth and death. Sat Darshanam. Sat means that which has no birth, no death, no change. It is constant, continuous, eternal, infinite. So, though I am that infinite blissful being, I am deluded. Strongly I am identifying with these limiting appendages called body, mind, and intellect, and I'm suffering. Because of that, I'm suffering. As long as the world and God are separate from me, I have no control over what happens. Each time I feel helpless, each time my expectations are thwarted, each time what I want does not happen or what I don't want happens, I suffer. Even when I'm happy, there is this insecurity. How long will I be happy? What will come to put an end to this happiness? Because in our experience, the world keeps changing. In fact, you hear some people, I have heard elders in my family say, if you are laughing a lot, you have a giggling fit and you keep on laughing and you can't stop, very enjoyable for the person who's doing it. But the elders in the family will say, don't laugh so much. If you laugh so much, you will also cry. That is not, we can take it as a superstition, but also it is not that you should not laugh and enjoy life, but there is this insecurity. They are only expressing that insecurity which is inside. Right now you're enjoying, no, but suffering is not far away. Life will bring that also to you. So Bhagavan is saying, if you want to be free from suffering, if you want to be ever blissful, then you have to dissociate from your limitations. That is the body, mind, and intellect. Thinking and the body, mind, and intellect are limiting you. So dissociate from those limitations and abide as the self. You have heard the truth about your true nature. So just be the self. What is so difficult about it? That is the best thing to do. That's the only thing which will free you from suffering. Of what use is it to argue about the nature of the world? Either because of Shastra Vasana, that means having studied the scriptures, a lot of the scriptures, or having loyalty to some one particular school of philosophy, etc. When scholars come together also who have studied deeply about the nature of the self, instead of abiding in the self, if they start arguing, saying the world is real, no, it's an illusion. The world is conscious. I say, look at how the planets are going in their orbits in such an orderly manner, millions of years, and they don't crash with each other. Therefore, the universe is conscious. Somebody else will say, it is the self that is lending consciousness to the inert universe, to the inert body, mind, and intellect. Therefore, the world is inert. Life is happy. The world is a happy world. No, it is a sad world. So what is the point of arguing like this? Actually, your real nature is beyond unity and duality. Unity presupposes many. We say the United Nations of America. That means there are many states. All of them are united under the name of America. There should be unity in the family. That means there are many family members. As long as they agree with each other, as long as they support each other, they are united. But any moment, if they stop supporting, the unity is gone. So therefore, unity presupposes multiplicity. So your real nature has no multiplicity. In fact, it doesn't even have duality. It's non-dual. There is no other. So I think my sharing just stopped. I don't know why. So I will share again.
Please mute your microphone, Asha. There seems to be some kind of a disturbance.
Can you see the presentation again?
Yes, Vani, we can.
Okay. So our true nature is beyond unity and duality. Therefore, Ramana Maharshi is saying, forget about the world. Don't worry about whether it is real or illusory. Turn away from the world, go within and abide in the self which is dear to all. Because everybody together has one self, all of us, we don't have separate selves. So and for each one of us, we are the dearest person. I am the dearest person to myself. And actually what is dear to me is this immortal part of me which is called the self. So the self is dear to everybody. This is what Bhagavan is telling us. So if we move on to Shloka 4, which is what we are starting with today. Let us chant it. I will chant once, we'll repeat it together. Sarupa buddhi jagat ishvare cha, Sarupa buddhi jagat ishvare cha, Sarupadhiratmani yavadasti, Sarupadhiratmani yavadasti, Arupatma yadikah prapashyet, Arupatma yadikah prapashyet, Sadrishti eka navadhirhi purna, Sadrishti eka navadhirhi purna. So here Ramana Maharshi is saying buddhihi sarupa, as long as the buddhi, the intellect, sarupa, with form, rupa is form, sa is with, as long as the buddhi or the intellect thinks or believes that it has a form, until then, yavat asti, until then, jagat ishvarecha, both jagat, the world, and Ishvara, the creator, the supreme energy whom we call God, Sarupa, they will also appear to have a form. Dhiratmani, Dhiratmani means the buddhi, the intellect, persists in thinking. Bhagavan is underlined. As long as the buddhi, Dhiratmani, persistently thinks that it has a form, yavat asti, until then, Jagat and Ishvara, both of them will also have a form. We feel that they have a form. Arupa Atma yadika prapashyet. When we abide as the self, when the self, because the self has no form, and if we identify with the self, then yadi kaha prapashyet, who is there to see? Who is there to see? Sadrishtihi eka anavadhirhi purna. That self or that seer, that all-seeing self, it is eka. It is the only reality. Anavadhirhi. Anavadhirhi means it is infinite. It is infinite. Purna. It is whole. So, we are taking the translations of Ganapati Muni and Lakshman Sharma, as I have said in every session. So what we just chanted was Kavya Kanta Ganapati Muni's translation of Saptarshanam. Bhagavan first authored it in Tamil and called it Ulladu Narpadu, 40 shlokas on reality. So Ganapati Muni, the translation we just chanted in Sanskrit, it translates into English like this: as long as the intellect persists in thinking that it has a form, the world and God to appear to have forms. When one is the formless self, who is there to see? There is no other. So who will see whom? We know that in deep sleep, there is nobody to see anybody else. It is itself the I, capital E-I, soul, only witness, complete, limitless. And Lakshman Sharma, we have taken only his English translation. He says, if the self has a form, then the world and God would also have forms, isn't it? Whatever we are, we think other people are also like us. So if there is a thief, he will be very careful with his belongings because he'll be thinking, oh, anybody may steal it from me. If somebody is a very good person, very trustworthy person, that person tends to trust everybody else also. So whatever we think we are, we see the same thing reflected around us. So if we think the self has a form, then the world and God would also have forms. But in actuality, the self is formless. In deep sleep, there is no form. So the self is formless. By whom and how are forms to be seen? There is no other, when there is only one formless self, what else is there to be seen and who is there to see it? Can what is seen be of a different nature from the seeing eye? Even physically, whatever my eyes are like, that much I can see. If I have short sight, I can only see what is close to me. If something is far away from me, I need to put on my glasses to see it clearly. If I have long sight, I may find it difficult to read what is kept close to me. I need to wear my glasses. If it is far away, I might be able to read it easily. So whatever is the nature of the seeing eye, that is what is seen outside. So if the seeing eye is formless, then there is only formlessness. The real I is the self itself, and that I is infinite, unconditioned, of the nature of consciousness, wordless, and without a second. We'll go into this in a little more detail. Just a story. There was a hunter. Okay. There was a hunter who was sitting on a horse with well-trained dogs, hunting hounds. He was riding towards the forest. He wanted to hunt some animals. So he's riding, and then he sees a herd of deer. Lots of deer are there. They're all in the forest. And he thinks, very good day for me. I think I can easily hunt a deer. So the hounds go and start barking, and all the deer run away. Only one deer who can't run so fast, who is still a young deer, that deer starts lagging behind. And the hunter is very swiftly pursuing that one deer. And that deer comes across a stream. So quickly the deer runs through the shallow stream, because when you run through water, the dogs lose the scent of the animal. So instinctively, the deer runs through the stream and it hides in some shrubbery. It can't be seen. By the time the hunter rides up, there is no sign of the deer. So the hunter looks around and he sees there is one old man who looks like a sage. He's sitting under a tree there. And he's a tapasvi, but at that moment he is not closing his eyes. He's just sitting very calmly there. And this hunter rides up to him. He gets off the horse. He just pranams to the sage and he says, I was chasing a deer. It came this way. I saw it come this way, but now I don't see where it is. Did you see it? Can you point out which way it went? I would like to pursue that deer. This sage he doesn't want to tell a lie because he's a Satyavadi. That is part of his dharma. He doesn't want to utter a lie. At the same time, if he tells the hunter, oh, I saw the deer go there, it is under that bush, then the hunter may kill the deer also. He doesn't want to put the deer in danger. So he makes a peculiar statement. He says, though the great eye is ever seeing, no one saw anyone because there is no other to see. Now he is stating a great Vedantic truth. The great eye, the self, the witness, it is ever seeing. Whichever state we are going through, waking, dream, deep sleep, we are in America, we are in India, we are somewhere else, but this witness is always present. It is ever aware. And if you identify with the self, obviously the sage is identifying with the self. He said, no one saw anyone because there is no other to see. There is only the self. What is there apart from the self? Therefore, there is no other to see. So the hunter could not make any sense of what this sage was saying. He thought he has meditated too long. I think he has gone crazy. So let me not bother talking to him anymore. Let me go and hunt for my deer on my own. So the world may react like that, which is why it is good in the transactional world to keep playing your role normally, but inside to be aware every moment of your true identity. What about God? There is this joke which is commonly known to many people. One day, man and God met each other. And when they met, how did they greet each other? Both of them exclaimed, "My Creator." We think God created us. But here, when God and man are meeting, you can guess which is God, which is man. I'm not going to say, according to your own this thing, you can say this is God, this is man, or that is God, this is man. It doesn't matter in the picture. Both of them, what is important is both are exclaiming, "My Creator." So, depending on how we see ourselves, on our own, of our own self-image, the small self. I think I'm generous, I think I'm a miser, I think I'm wise, I think I'm foolish. So I think I'm very well qualified, I think I'm not much good. Whatever is the self-image I have of myself, I superimpose the same image on the super force that I call God. So we make God in our own image. That's what this joke is trying to tell us. We give it a name, we give it a form, we give it our own qualities. So I was just talking to the maid who comes to help us in our house every day. So she was saying, if I don't go to my village once a year when the temple festival happens and pray to the deity and do some worship in my house, prescribed worship rituals, etc., then it's very bad, she was telling me. So I said, what is bad about it? You can, even from wherever you are, can't you pray to your God? So then she said, no, you don't understand. Nobody told you about this, is it? If you don't go there at the time, God will curse you. It's very bad. So what is happening? Our own tendency to hate, to be angry, to take revenge, we are superimposing on this force that we call God. So if we don't placate this force, I think we will be cursed. If we placate that force, if we flatter that energy, if we appease that energy, then we think we will get a boon. Things will go right. Whatever I need in life, that may be granted to me. Because I blow hot and blow cold, because I am a moody person, I think God also is a moody person, you never know what God will do. So unpredictable. But what does Ramana Maharshi say? What does Vedanta say? God or self or your true nature, it is the most stable force, constant, ever loving, ever blissful, eternal, infinite, no change, no birth, no death. So on this force, we are superimposing so many things and believing that they are true. And we live life in these beliefs. Also, we make beliefs about the world. Whatever we think about ourselves, we superimpose on the world, on every person around us. So, Shloka 5. The earlier shloka also will keep getting elaborated as we go on. So, let us chant Shloka 5, lead and chant. यत्पञ्चकोशात्मकमस्ति देहं यत्पञ्चकोशात्मकमस्ति देहं तदन्तर किं भुवनं चकास्ति तदन्तर किं भुवनं चकास्ति देहं विना पञ्चविधं तदेतत् देहं विना पञ्चविधं तदेतत् पश्यन्ति के वा भुवनं भणन्तु पश्यन्ति के वा भुवनं भणन्तु. So we may get a doubt, whenever Bhagavan will keep saying deha, body, we identify with the body. Bhagavan will keep saying we identify with the body. Then what does Bhagavan mean when he says don't identify with the body? What about my thoughts? What about my feelings? And Vedanta says, Vedanta tells us you have 5 sheets of consciousness. What about those 5 sheets of consciousness? We're only talking about 1 or 2 sheets. All those doubts may be in our minds. So, Ramana Maharshi is saying, Yat Deham, that body. He is not saying this body. This means something that is close to me. This means I'm already identifying with it. He's saying that body. Which body? That body. Panchakoshatmaka masti. It is made up of 5 sheets. 5 sheets of consciousness. Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. So all these 5 sheets, Tadantara Kim Bhuvanam Chakasti. It is because of this. How would we, if not for this 5 sheets body, 5 sheets that we have, how else would we see the world? Bhuvanam, world. Kim, how? Chakasti. Tat Bhuvanam. Tadantara Chakasti. How will we see? Chakasti is see. Deham vina panchavidam tadetat. So tat deham, without this body, vina is without. Etat panchavidam. How would we see this 5-fold creation? Pashyanti keva bhuvanam bhanantu. How is it possible to see this world without? Who can see this world without a body, without these 5 sheets? Bhanantu. Please tell. Pashyanti, see, ke, va, anybody, anyone at all, bhuvanam, world, how can they see? Bhanantu, please tell. So the translation is, this body is made up of 5 sheets. If not, how could you see the world? Without this fivefold body, can anyone see the world? Please tell. That is what Bhagavan is asking. So since Lakshman Sharma is saying, since all the bodies in the world, mine, yours, somebody else's, only I have 5 sheets? No, everybody has 5 sheets. The Annamaya, this body, physical body, which arises from food and which is sustained by food, and it goes back to food. Either you burn it and scatter the ashes or put it in water, or you bury the body. It will decompose, it goes back to the soil or the water, the 5 elements, and it comes back in the form of plants or in the form of food. For some being, whatever comes up is a food. So all this together answer to the name of body. Somebody says Janki Ram or Malti or Asha, then it is not only the body that answers. Body, mind, intellect, energy, all of them together will identify with Asha, with the body. So whenever, in other words, Ramana Maharshi is saying, okay, we have just started, we are still in the 5th shloka of Saptarshana, 40 shlokas on reality. So he is defining, he is saying, from now, after the 5th shloka, whenever I mention the word body, please understand I am referring to all 5 sheets of consciousness. I am referring to all 5 sheets of consciousness. Pranamaya Kosha includes, it is the energy body. The energy body, which is a interface between mind and intellect and the physical body. Without the energy body, mind, intellect and physical body cannot communicate with each other. It is the energy body. It contains the pancha pranas, which carry out all the functions in the physical body. The mind and intellect, they all depend on the pancha pranas to be active. It contains the pancha karmendriyas, the 5 action, the 5 what should we say, the organs of action, the mouth, 2 hands, 2 legs, the anus and the sexual organ, all together are the pancha jnanendriyas, pancha karmendriyas. So all the pancha karmendriyas and the pancha pranas together make up the pranamaya kosha. Then we have manomaya kosha, all the thoughts and feelings. The manomaya kosha is a bundle of thoughts and feelings. The vijnanamaya kosha is the decision making faculty of the mind. It makes decisions. The Anandamaya kosha is called the sheath of bliss. It's the subtlest sheath of the body. So all these together make up the body. So from the 5th shloka onwards, whenever Bhagavan is referring to the Deha, he is talking about all 5 sheaths. Such being the case, to continue reading what is on the slide, does the world really exist apart from the body? So without the Panchakoshas, you cannot perceive the world. Is the world seen by anyone without a body? Just go back to your own deep sleep experience. Deep sleep, you are not aware of the body, mind or intellect. You are not aware of the koshas. Then, can you see the world? It disappears. Every single night, when you and I, when all of us, we slip into the state of deep sleep, then what happens? The minute we slip into the state of deep sleep, the world absolutely disappears. The body, this body which is a part of the world, also disappears. It is only when I wake up that the body and the world come back. Therefore, Bhagavan is not asking us to imagine anything, to conceptualize anything. He's talking about our own everyday experience. He's saying, every night, every single night, when you slip into deep sleep and you're not aware of the Panchakoshas, can you see the world? No. So he's asking us a very simple question. 5 sheets, the intellect sheet, I said this is according to Tattva Bodha. What are the 5 sheets? Panchakoshaha ke, Annamayaha, Pranamayaha, Manomayaha, Vijnanamayaha, Anandamayash Cheti. So these are the 5 sheets of consciousness. We come to shlokas. Let us chant and lead and follow the chant. शब्दादिरूपं भुवनं समस्तं शब्दादिसत्येन्द्रियवृत्तिभास्य सत्येन्द्रियाणां मनसो वशे स्यात् सत्येन्द्रियाणां मनसो वशे स्यात् मनोमयं तद् भुवनं वदामः मनोमयं तद् Bhuvanam Vadamaha. So, Ramana Maharshi is making a very, very factual statement, very basic statement. But actually, when you read this sloka, it can startle you. We take it so much for granted that we may not have cognized this fact consciously. He is saying, Bhuvanam Samas. You cannot understand.
Vani, your audio keeps coming and going. It's not coming.
Is it?
Continuously, yes.
Okay, just a minute. Audio keeps coming and going. How do I skip? Use internet full signal transfer. ಬಾಗ್ಲು ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಾಗ್ಲು ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡಿಟ್ಟು ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, definitely. Yes, better? Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just need to get back to the sharing. Vasu, can you help me get back to the sharing? Okay, so Bhagavan is making a very startling statement, though it is extremely basic. He's saying, do you realize that this entire world, which you say is so real and it's the most real thing in your life, it is only perceptible to you because of your 5 senses. If you did not have these 5 senses, then it would not be perceptible to you. Even if we sit with our eyes closed, we sit for meditation, we can't see the world for some time. If I go into a soundproof room, I can't hear whatever is going on outside. If I get a cold, my nose is all stuffed up. Something very tasty can be cooked. Maybe a cake is being baked, or someone is making masala dosas. Someone is making some dish which is my favorite. Then, in spite of all that happening, and my friend may say, what delicious smells we are getting, but I can't smell anything. If you get a fever and your tongue doesn't function well, nothing seems to taste nice. Everything has a flat taste. If you get pins and needles in your leg, sitting in the same position for a long time, or something, then if somebody, when it is very, very numb, if somebody touches it also, you don't feel it. Somebody is touching your leg, you don't feel it. So the entire realm of reality, what we call reality, what we call the world, it is continuously being mapped. It's constantly being mapped by the five senses. Without these five senses, the world is non-existent. So in the night when we are sleeping, in deep sleep, repeatedly we come back to the experience of deep sleep and dream, because Vedanta also depends on these three experiences, our day-to-day experiences, to bring home the truth to us. So if we think back, just last night you had, or if not last night, night before that, when you slept well, when you slept deeply without dreams, lots of things might have happened. Dogs may be barking in the street. That is in India, maybe not in the US. In the US, maybe your neighbor was blasting away the stereo. It can happen here also. Somebody blasting away the TV at high volume, or some neighbor getting into a quarrel, or a party happening in somebody's house. All that may have been happening. Maybe in your own house, things happened. But your senses were not functioning. They were not mapping the external world. Therefore, the world did not exist for you. So if the five senses go out of action, there is no world. The world is only a map given to us by the five senses. So Shabdadi Rupam, Bhuvanam Samastam Rupam, the entire form of the world. Here I would also translate it as map of the world. Shabdadi, Shabda Adi, sound, etc. All the five inputs, sensory inputs. And these Shabdadis, they depend on Satyendriya, that means the subtle senses. The subtle body, what we call the subtle body, actually have senses. These senses are also active in dreams. I'm not hearing, I'm not aware of the outer world, but my dream world, these subtle senses, which are actually, the physical body has these apertures. It has the hardware, but the software, so that I can receive inputs. Whatever falls upon these physical senses, they are next made sense of by Satyendriya, the subtle body, the subtle senses, which function very clearly for us in dream realm. So in my dream, I can hear music. In my dream, I can smell nice things or bad things. In my dream, I can taste what I'm eating. So all the pancha indriyas, jnanendriyas, are also functioning in a subtle form in my dream reality. So these subtle indriyas, the software of the indriyas, their vritti, their action, because of them, I can hear, bhasya, I can perceive what is given to me by the physical body, the hardware, the five senses in the physical body, sensory organs. Satyendriyanam manaso vashesya. So these subtle senses are actually in control of the mind. Manaso vashesya. They are in the vasha, the control of the mind. Manomayam tad bhuvanam vadamaha. Therefore, when the senses bring me, they bring me a certain smell, I will say, oh, this is actually pepper, this is clove. By looking at the smell, I say, my mind is identifying. My mind is making the map. The inputs are coming from the senses, but the mind is actually making sense out of it. The mind is controlling the senses. The mind is making sense out of whatever is brought to me, the inputs. Therefore, Bhagavan is saying, now he is throwing a thunderbolt at us. He started by saying, with a basic statement saying, without these five senses, there is no world. That was in the previous shloka. Now he is saying, these five senses, whatever they map, it is the mind that is creating the map. It is labeling. It is giving information. It is drawing out information from the inputs. Therefore, manomayam tat bhuvanam vadamaha. This world is actually nothing but your own mind. You think there is another reality out there? Sorry. It is your own mind that is the world. So let us look at translations. The world is in the form of five senses like sound, etc. These senses are known through the five sense organs. The mind alone perceives the world through these sense organs. Therefore, the world is nothing but the mind. And Lakshman Sharma says, the world has no form apart from the objects of sense, namely the sounds and the rest. Thus, the whole universe is just sensations of the five sense organs. Through these five sense organs, the one mind knows the world. That being so, is the world other than the mind? Very logical derivation. You can't fault the logic of what is being placed in front of you. And it is backed up by your own experience, isn't it? In deep sleep, the mind is dormant. When the mind is dormant, in deep sleep, there is no world. When the mind wakes up, the world comes into being. Therefore, Bhagavan is saying, world is equal to mind. Mind is equal to world. That is the equation he is giving us. Now, just a small story to drive home the point. One way of understanding how the mind is the world. There are several layers to it. So we are going to look at it layer by layer. So this is the, you can say, one uppermost layer. So here in this slide, we see a picture. There is a village and there is a Harikatha going on. The glories of the Ramayana, the glories of Lord Rama are being recited, described by a very famous narrator. His name is Samartha. So Samartha is describing the glories of Ramayana, and the village folk are all sitting around him. And it is said in the Ramayana that Hanuman is a Chiranjeevi. So wherever the glories of Rama are sung, or even the name of Rama is chanted, Anjaneya is present there. So here also Anjaneya was present there. We see him sitting nearby on a tree and he is listening. So this narrator, Samartha, he was at that point talking about Hanuman's journey to Lanka to give the Chintamani to Sita. He wanted to go and meet Sita, reassure her, Rama is coming to rescue you, don't lose hope, retain your courage, hold fast, and Rama will come. He also wanted to see what Lanka is like, what Ravana is like. So he is the first, not an ambassador so much as a investigator going from Rama, agent of Rama. So the Samartha is saying, how Anjaneya leaped across the ocean and he landed in Lanka and he met Sita, who was sitting in Ashokavana, and there were demonesses there and everything. And he said, in Ashokavana, there are beautiful white flowers blooming. So many beautiful white flowers were blooming there. And then Hanuman thinks, everything else that this narrator is saying, he is narrating correctly. But I was the one who went, he didn't go. I went and I saw red flowers there. I didn't see any white flowers. Why is he saying white? When everything else he's saying correctly, why is he making a mistake about the color of flowers? So he decided to correct this narrative. So he manifested himself in front of Samartha and he said, Are Samartha, honored one, your narration is really good, but what I saw in the Ashokavana were red flowers, not white. So why are you saying white? So he said, well, I am quoting from the Ramayana of Valmiki, so therefore it cannot be wrong. I have studied it in great detail and I'm only narrating what I have read. So Hanuman and Samartha are at loggerheads. Then Hanuman says, let us go and meet Lord Rama. So he carries Samartha and they go and meet Rama in some other realm. Then, and they place their puzzle, their disagreement in front of Rama. So Rama says, well, Anjaneya, I never went into Ashokavana. You were there. Sita was there. When I came to Lanka, I only fought a battle. I didn't go to Ashokavana. So I don't know what you saw. When you saw it, I was not there. Therefore, you have to go to Sita and ask her. So they go to Sita. Then Goddess Sita says, both of you are correct. Anjaneya says, no, don't try to please us, We are not interested in being pleased. Please tell us the truth. What was the color of the flowers? So Sita said, actually the flowers were white. But Anjaneya was boiling with anger. How dare Ravana kidnap the consort of my Rama? How dare Sita be subjected to all these atrocities, the demonesses coming and scaring her, and she has to live out there in Ashokavana. Ravana will come and threaten her. In spite of all that, she is there. So he is boiling with anger. She said that anger reddened, it lent a red tinge to the entire world. Therefore, you saw the flowers as red. So, first truth is, whatever is our conditioning, it makes us perceive the world like that. If I am suspicious about somebody, even if that person is actually doing a helpful act, meaning no harm to me. In order to help me, that person is doing something because of my conditioning, thinking that he is not a trustworthy person or she is not a trustworthy person, then my mind will read it in a different way. No, she, why will she help me? Why will he help me? At no time has that person come forward to help me. Always putting boulders in my path. This also is some kind of scheme only. Some scheme is going on. Something is there in his mind. That is why he is being nice to me. So what is happening? Coloring. So two people may be living in the same house. Shri Narasimha Prabhuji sometimes gives this example. He says husband and wife, they live in the same house. They look at the same things. They do similar things. They eat similar things. So outer world is almost the same for them. But inner world, are they experiencing that space in the same way? Totally different, because their vasanas are different, their conditioning is different, their baggage is different. So the way they respond, the way they perceive is completely different. So for each one of us, whatever is conditioning, that colors what we see outside. So that is what we learn from this story. We see a reflection of ourselves around us. So now coming to the state of deep sleep. All of us have experienced it, we keep experiencing it. So I don't have to describe. Is there any limitation in deep sleep? When I'm awake, it is only this body. If I hit this cushion or this laptop or anything which is not this body, I don't feel it. Therefore, I'm limited to this body, these five senses. I'm limited to the conditioning of my mind. I'm limited to the knowledge that my intellect can process. All these are limitations. But in deep sleep, none of these limitations are there. I'm infinite. I'm constant. Today's experience of deep sleep is the same as 20 years ago, whatever experience I had about deep sleep. Tomorrow, what I will have about deep sleep is the same experience each time. And in my deep sleep experience, there is no other. There is only the seer. There is only the witness. There is only me. And every time deep sleep is peaceful. Every time deep sleep is bliss. I am peace. I am bliss when I am in deep sleep. So we saw last time also, whether I am a man or a woman, whether I am young or old, deep sleep is the same for all of us. Whether you are a beggar or a king, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are powerful or meek, deep sleep is the same for you. Whether you are a European or Indian, whether you are fair or dark, whichever race you belong to, whichever creed you belong to, whichever continent you are in, whichever country you are in, whichever caste you belong to, in deep sleep, you are all equal. We are all equal. We experience absolutely the same thing. Whether I am a pope or a mullah, whether I am a priest or I belong to the Jewish tradition, or I am a Sikh, or I am a Jain or a Buddhist, for everybody, deep sleep is constant. It is the same experience. Whether I am a sinner or a saint, I need not rob a bank, but still sometimes I think, oh, I made this mistake, it is not good. So whether I feel like that or I feel very noble in deep sleep, the same experience is mine. Therefore, in deep sleep, we are the self. There is no other there. We are the self. There is no barrier. There is no wrong identification. We are the self in deep sleep. So every single one of us have the experience of self. We know what it is like. So when we wake up in the morning, when we come out of deep sleep state, what happens? The mind arises first. When the mind arises, then senses come into play, then the world arises. So when the world arises, suddenly time and space come into being. In deep sleep, was there time and space? No time, no space. I have to keep an alarm if I want to get up at some particular time. There is no space at all. There is no time, therefore there is no space, no other. But the minute I wake up, time and space come into being. So time and space exist, they arise within us. In deep sleep, there is no time and space. When the mind arises, time and space arise. Therefore, time and space exist in the mind, they arise in the mind. That is what we understand from this shloka. Also, in deep sleep, we were one with the self, but as soon as we woke up, as soon as the mind came into being, once again I start identifying with the body, mind and intellect. So just recalling Upadesha Saram Shloka 13, which we did when we were doing Upadesha Saram, let us chant it once. Laya vinashane ubhayarodhane, Laya vinashane ubhayarodhane, Layagatam punar bhavati nomritam, Layagatam punar bhavati nomritam. So there are two ways in which there is a thoughtless state, in which there is an experience of the self. Experience is the wrong word because it means there is something to experience something else. There is when we are the self, we abide as the self. One is when the mind is temporarily suspended, as in deep sleep or as in very good meditation. If we had very good meditation, we were the self. Then there is another state where there is a permanent destruction of the mind. That means what is temporary, like in deep sleep, Bhagavan calls manolaya. Laya means suspension. Temporarily, mind is suspended. In manonasha, that means destruction of the mind, permanently the mind is destroyed. What do we mean by destruction of the mind? Is it possible for us to continue to be functional in the world if the mind is destroyed? We have seen sometimes people who have become vegetables. Is that what permanent destruction of the mind means? So, Manolaya examples, deep sleep, meditation. Manonasha example, Sahaja Samadhi or dropping body identity. It means we have what is called Antakarana. That means the inner faculty, which in English we say mind. Antakarana is made up of Manas, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta. Manas is the thinking, feeling faculty. Buddhi is the decision making faculty. Chitta is the memory bank. And Ahankara is the body identity. So these four together, these four functions, there are four functions only, not different faculties. These four functions together we call Antakarana. In English we say mind. So when the body identity, only the Ahankara is dropped, instead of thinking I am the body, believing that I am the body, that means the 5 sheets, I am aware that is an equipment which I can use, but I am the self. So that is Sahaja Samadhi. All the time to be aware of this is Sahaja Samadhi. That is the state of Manonashata. All the other faculties, the thinking, feeling, decision making, memory, everything will be perfectly functioning. Only this sticky part, the part that causes us suffering, only that one part is dropped. So that is Manonasha. In the case of Manolaya, we know by experience. We have deep meditation, we feel so good when we come out of it, but after some time, as soon as we come out of the meditation, mind is back, world is back, and suffering is back because separation is there. Same thing after deep sleep. But in Sahaja Samadhi, the Ahankara is dropped forever. The sticky tape, the Fevicol, which creates the suffering, that is gone. And because that is gone, suffering is gone. When that is gone, there is only bliss. So, another small story to see how our attitude also decides how we see the world. For a jnani, when he knows that he is the self, every single thing in the world is the self. Because there is only Brahman, finally. All others are manifestations of Brahman. They are appearances on Brahman. In deep sleep, there is only Brahman. But in dream state, my mind will start manifesting as its entire dream, which is so real, which is so vivid. But in actuality, when I wake up, I see that was all a product of my own mind. It was only being projected by my mind. Every single thing in the dream, every figment of the dream was just my mind. So for a jnani, he can see that this whole world is just an appearance on Brahman. It is just a manifestation of Brahman. There is nothing that is not Brahman. Because of that, he sees the world differently. He can still see the trees, he can still see the furniture, he can still see everything in the world, but it is himself that he is seeing. Therefore, because there is no other, he is always at peace, he is always bliss. He is not blissful or peaceful, he is peace, he is bliss. So there was this traveler, he was trekking. He was trekking somewhere in the mountains, and he was walking from one village to another as part of his trek, and he came across this old bearded farmer. This farmer was digging in his field somewhere on the hillside, and this traveler, he was trying to decide, should I go to that village I can see down there in the valley? Should I go there or should I not go? So he asks this old farmer, how is that village, you can see down there? What is it like? Is it nice? Is it worth visiting? So this farmer didn't answer directly. He said, where did you come from? Right now, from where are you coming? So this youth said, I'm coming from that village. Can you see up there on the mountain? I was there in that mountain village. I spent the night there and I'm coming from there now. So the old man said, okay, how did you find that village? And this traveler said, don't ask. It was so cold. Last night was really cold. And then there was no bedding, so I had to sleep on the floor in somebody's house. And those people, they speak some language which I could not even understand. So they could not understand me, I could not understand them. And it was horrible. It was really bad. So this farmer said, then, that village in the valley will be also like that. Not going to be any different. And this youth went his way. Then one more after some time, another trekker came. And he asked this old man the same question. He said, I can see this pretty village in the valley. Is it worth visiting? Do you think I should go there? The old man said, where did you come from? So this youth also said, I came from that mountain village. You can see there. So this man said, how was it? How did you like that village? So this boy said, oh, for the first time in my life, I experienced what cold is. You know, when I go home, I can tell my family, I really understood what cold is. Maza aa gaya. It was really nice. So cold. And then the house where I stayed in, they didn't have bedding. So, you know, I learned how to adjust, how to sleep on a cold floor when it is very cold and still not feel bad about it. And the place where I stayed, you know, the funny thing is, I didn't know the language of those people. They didn't know mine. So we were all communicating with all kinds of funny gestures and laughing at each other. Oh, we had so much fun. It was great. So the old man said, then that village also will be great. Go and visit it. So, same two villages, different travelers, experiences, so different. So life is just 1% about what happens outside and 99% about what happens inside. In this way also, the world is the mind. The world is the mind because of our conditioning. The world is the mind because of how we experience it, because of the conditioning. The world is the mind because when the mind is not there in deep sleep, there is no world. And when the mind arises, the world springs back. Therefore, mind is equal to world. So this we'll quickly go through 7 shloka. Or should we go through or should we stop now? It is 7:57. I think we'll take it for next time. We'll stop at the 6th shloka. So before we open up for questions, can we just sit with our eyes closed for a minute? Sit with our eyes closed for a minute. Spine straight. Right now, your eyes are closed, so you don't have visual input. At the most, maybe you can sense some kind of brightness outside through the lids of your eyes because the light is burning. Feel the contact of the seat on which you're sitting. Feel the contact of the clothes on your body. Feel the contact of your feet with your footwear or floor. Sense of touch, mapping the world for you. Maybe you are able to smell something, maybe something cooking in the kitchen, maybe some perfume you are wearing, or even if you can't, you can sense through your nose that there is no perceptible smell. So that is also mapping. Maybe you're listening to sounds, you can hear my voice. Maybe you can hear other sounds going on in your own house, in your neighbor's house. Sense of hearing is mapping the world. Your tongue, maybe you can taste some coffee, tea, water, something you just had, or maybe there's no taste. Whatever it is, your tongue is also mapping the world. All these inputs are coming, and your mind is making sense of it. It knows you're sitting in a certain seat, chair, or sofa, whatever it is. You're wearing these kind of clothes. You're wearing these kind of footwear. The sound that you heard was the cooker or neighbor's TV or my voice. So your senses are giving inputs. Your mind is making sense of those inputs. Mind is actually mapping the world. Just recall how it is to wake up in the morning. How is it to go to sleep in the night? Let's start with that. Going to sleep in the night. Slowly, you detach yourself from the sensory input. So, when you sleep, you can still feel, hear, smell, all that is going on. Slowly, the mind detaches from the senses. And then you slip into sleep. Then let's say a dream starts. When the dream starts, the thinking faculty and the imagination faculty of the mind are still functioning. They have created an entire 5D film. We have seen 3D films, but this is a 5D film. You can't just see and hear. You can also experience, you can taste, you can smell, you can touch. You're actually there in that realm of reality. So, the thinking and imaginative faculties of the mind are still active. Slowly, the dream is over. And you are slipping into dreamless sleep. You are awake. You are awake, but it is as though you are in deep sleep. Just try to recollect deep sleep state as you are awake. The Jnani is said to be in waking sleep. That means the same limitless eternal bliss, peace of deep sleep. He is aware of it in waking state. Just recollect that wonderful deep sleep. Allow the stillness to be there. If a thought arises, let it rise and fall. Remain identified with the stillness, with the knower of the stillness. Slowly the mind is waking up. As the mind stirs, you become aware of sounds, sensations. You become aware of space, become aware of your body, where the body is, become aware of the space around you, your bedroom, your living room. So when the mind arises, the world is also arising. Whenever you have even a few minutes during the day between tasks, you can close your eyes and recollect the state of deep sleep. Waking sleep. Be careful not to slip into sleep, but just recollect the stillness, the infinitude, the no otherness, the bliss, the peace. Let us offer our pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi for his amazing wisdom. I would like to dedicate the phala of this Jnana Yajna to Sri Shivanand Bandekar, who was a close friend and he was a very loyal satsangi of the school, also a wonderful human being who passed on last Saturday. I dedicate the fruit of this Jnana Yajna to the peace of his being. May his journey be smooth. I dedicate it to the strength of his family. May they have the fortitude to come to terms with their loss. May all beings be happy. May all beings abide in the self. Slowly open your eyes. With your eyes open, just see if you can retain the stillness inside. You can see all your five senses are functioning, the mind is active. Can you retain the peace and bliss and stillness of deep sleep? I thank each and every one of you. Malti, over to you. And
Thank you.
I just wanted to say next Thursday there will be no session of Saddarshana. Next Friday. Friday, there will be no session of Saddarshana because the forum that we are also having talks through, which was started by my parents, Meditation and Study Circle. It has completed 41 years. So we are celebrating online with 1 week of talks, continuous talks every evening called Festival of Self-Awareness. So because of that, it would not be possible for me to do the session on next Friday, but the Friday after that, it will continue as usual again, every Friday. Thank you. Over to you, Malti.
Thank you, Vani. First, I want to know if anyone has any questions. There doesn't seem to be any questions in the chat box. Lots of thanks coming in.
If you want, you can unmute and ask also.
Yes. If you do not want to type on the chat box, you may please unmute yourself, and one by one you can ask your questions.
There is some question here. Ma'am, every morning, in spite of making affirmations and resolutions, I still end up being angry. The reasons for being angry would be as simple as when my daughter in class 4 does not listen to me, okay? To bigger issues of people speaking ill of us, be it spouse or other family members. How does one handle critics in society in spite of one's sincere efforts to follow what is right? So, if somebody asked Ramana Maharshi this question, he would, I vibe with you. I know how life can overtake sometimes and how difficult it can be also. But even that can be turned towards self-inquiry. So if somebody asks such a question of Bhagavan, probably he would say, find out who is angry. Find out who is angry. So affirmations are good. Affirmations have their place. They have their power. It is very good. At the same time, it is not a permanent solution. The permanent solution is self-abidance, dropping identity of body, mind, and intellect. Because as long as I have that identity, then there is me and there are others. My daughter is separate from me. Yes, I love her very much. Why do I love my daughter? Because it gives me happiness. She is very sweet. She is my own daughter. Therefore, it gives me happiness to love her. Why do I love my friend? It gives me happiness to love my friend. So ultimately, every single thing we do is because it gives us happiness. Each one of us. I do it because it gives me happiness. My husband will do it because it gives him happiness. My friend will do it because it gives her happiness. Even the most noble thing, I may go and serve food in orphanages. I may go and spend time in vruddhashrams with the elderly. It is good, but ultimately, why do I do it? It gives me joy. It gives me fulfillment. It gives me happiness. So finally, everything points back to the self. So that's why Jnana is supposed to be the permanent solution. Self-inquiry gives us knowledge. It corrects misconception. What is the misconception? I am the body. And because I am the body, everyone else is different from me. And I have to meet my expectations according to my conditioning, etc., etc., etc. All that big contract is there, unwritten contract. We have unwritten contracts with everybody. And we are giving remotes to everybody with the contracts. They press a remote, it makes me angry. They press another remote, I get irritated. One more remote, I get one more button, I get depressed. Another button, I start laughing. So I am giving my power away. The minute I say I am different, you are different, suffering enters the equation. There are joyous times when expectations are met. There are tough times, angry times, irritable times, frustrating times, and expectations are not met. When my contract has been, somebody is violating my contract, unwritten contract. So that is why Ramana Maharshi says, abide in the self. You are already the self. That's the easiest part about it. You don't have to become anything. When we are saying affirmations, I have also done a lot of affirmations. What do I do when I affirm something? I do it in the present tense. I say, I am patient. I will not say I want to become patient. I will not say I want to give up anger. I say I am patient. I try to make my mind believe that it is true in the present. But I am the self. There is no belief there. I am already the self. My daily deep sleep experience is proving it to me. My dream experience is proving it to me. My waking experience is proving it to me. It is my own truth. It is not a belief. And it is in the present already. I am the self. The only thing is, I'm not cognizing it. Therefore, Bhagavan will say, find out who is angry. So at that time, sometimes the momentum of the vasana, the anger or irritation or depression may be very strong. It may hijack us. But if you can catch it in time, even at that moment, you can ask, who is angry? I'm angry, I say. Then who am I? No verbal answers. The mind is quiet. That is the self. Another thought arises. Bhagavan says, for whom is this thought? Ask. It is for me. Who am I? Stillness. The one who is aware of the stillness, that is me, the witness. So that is my true identity. Whenever possible, when good times are there, it's easy to go back. Build up a positive account first. When things are going well for me, when I am peaceful, it is easy for me to abide in the stillness. So if I store that up, I practice when things are good, then it is easier. That will come to my aid. I don't mean disasters, I don't mean crises, but these small things, these pinpricks that you are talking about. When my daughter doesn't listen to me, who is angry? I. Then who am I? So the stronger the relationship I make with the self, that is me, when the small self begins to wag its tail, I can bring that. I can bring that into the foreground. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, but at the same time, it's not impossible. It's not as difficult as we make it out to be. Because I don't have to become something I'm not. I already am that. All that I have to do is recognize. All that I have to do is abide. That's all. So because of that, it is easy. But because of the vasana bala, the conditioning that pulls us, it can be also difficult. But if I am persistent, if I am motivated, then if I am convinced that this is the only way, permanent solution for my suffering, then I will do it. And I will find, surprisingly, it is not as hard as I thought it will be. So I hope that was of some help.
Any more questions? So thank you, Vani, for covering verses 4, 5, and 6 of Satdarshanam. The explanations were really very, very lucid, and it was very clear to understand you because you presented the whole thing in such a wonderful, simple way. All of us could really sit and understand as well as enjoy the whole session. At this stage, I would like to say that there will be no Saddarshanam class next Friday at 6:30 as Vani is busy with another session. But we will meet again on Friday the 26th of February when at 6:30 we will be continuing this series. So please, all of you, remember and make a note of 26th February, 6:30 p.m. on Cisco WebEx, and we will try to send you the link as soon as it is available. Thank you from all the participants, Vani, and I want to thank the School of Ancient Wisdom for organizing this, all the organizers, Aniket, Ravi, and I would also like to thank everyone who has come in today and Vani especially. I want to conclude this session, but not before I request Mr. Vasudev to please render the Shanti Mantra. Are you there, Mr. Vasudev?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so
Malti.
much. Yeah, thank you.
The Shanti Mantra, offering the fruits of wisdom of the sun to everyone, to all beings in all planes of the universe. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Brahmarpanamastu. Thank you, everyone, for your divine presence and participation. Thank you, Malti.